Okay, so when you think of a hacker, you probably think about somebody, kind of geeky, knows a lot about computers, a great programmer, and that's not always the case. Sometimes the best hackers, aren't even great coders. They don't even know programming. They just have very good social skills and know how to get information out of people. And some of the world's greatest hacks have been accomplished through what's called social engineering. Social engineers, rather than trying to break into your firewall or things like that, or trying to hack your passwords, what they do is they get it out of you. They call you, they email you, they do all kinds of things, and they impersonate others. They try to get into your circle of trust and to get information out of you. So, for example, a couple of examples of social engineering is you get somebody calls and says, "Hey, I'm from the bank. Your account's overdrawn," and then you say, "Oh no," and they might ask you a couple questions. They try to lead you to believe that they're the bank officer and that they're trying to help you out so that you don't bounce the check. And then they might ask you, like, "Hey, what can you verify your identity? What's your social?" That's what they're trying to get out of you. That was the purpose for that call. Okay. People could call you and pretend they're from the phone company and say, your bill is due, we don't want to cut off your phone, and always can just to make sure I'm talking to the right person, can you verify the last 4 digits of your social? Can you verify your birthday? They're trying to get some information. And eventually you can get enough information from a person that you can later on impersonate that person. Then you could really call the telephone company, you could really call the bank, and then when the bank asks you these same questions, you've got them at hand because that the real person has divulged them already to you, and then you can impersonate that person. So this is called social engineers. When somebody calls you, do not ever give out information unless you could positively, without any doubt, identify the caller. And don't just rely on caller ID, because caller ID, just like an email sender, could be spoofed or faked. Okay, if you get a call from somebody claiming to be your bank or your credit card, the best thing to do is say, "Hey, let me hang up and I'll call you right back." And then you call the number that's on the back of your card or the number that's on your bank statement. Okay, because that is really the only way that you know that you're talking to the real person and not just somebody who is trying to fake their way out of getting information from you. Reduce the amount of information on social media. Again, we've discussed this several times, because social engineers can use this to create a sense of familiarity. They already know a lot about you, so they can say, "Hey, I'm calling from the bank. By the way, I want to verify your middle name is Angel. Is that right?" And then all of a sudden, boom, you clicked. It creates a little bit of familiarity. All kinds of manipulative tricks that they use, but it's very effective. And like I said, some of the world's greatest hacks have been done by social engineers. Do not give any passwords, any personal information. If you get a call from our help desk and you don't recognize the technician's voice, then hang up. Say, "I'm sorry, sometimes I know our technicians call you and they're proactive and they say, 'Hey, we notice your computer's running a little slow.'" If, each company that we deal with, you have a group of 2 or 3 techs that are always assigned to you. So if you don't recognize the voice of one of those groups of 2 or 3 techs, tell our tech, "Hey, I'm sorry, but I don't recognize your voice. Let me call you right back." Then hang up and call our help desk to continue it. Okay, because you never know who could be calling you. Also, don't post information about the owners of your business or your managers. They're high-value targets. Their information is very valuable because they can then become victims of spear phishing or whaling attacks, which is a term used to describe very targeted attacks meant to go out and get the big fish, the CEOs and things like that. So try not to post a lot of information about them, especially if they don't know about it. Always get their permission before you do. Okay, I want to go over this particular case because it's a social engineering hack, and it's just to give you an example of how creative these things can be. This is a very secure organization, a bank, right, in Chile, and an employee got duped into thinking he was doing a job interview. I don't know the exact details of how it went down, but I would imagine something like this. Sees an ad online, company is expanding into the Chilean market, we're looking for bankers, submit your resume, blah, 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 blah. Once the communication started going, they probably asked him to do a Skype interview, and they told him probably, we're opening up branches, and the interview was going along, but here's the hook. At some point, they told him, here's a file that we're going to send you. It's a presentation, or I can't remember what it was, but he accepted it, and I believe it came through his chat or through Skype. I don't know exactly, but it didn't go through the normal channels because it would have probably been caught and it would have probably been stopped by the perimeter. But again, this is something that he was using Skype and he was communicating with somebody who he didn't know. And he was doing it from inside a secure workplace. So there's a lot going on. Number one is getting duped by a social engineer. These guys are good. They're very smart. Okay, tricky, clever. They know how to manipulate people. They know how to manipulate the situation. They've got a good mind for how people think. Okay, so that in itself was difficult. But another thing is, I Skype on the computer inside a bank network, allowing employees to go into job interviews. That's also, to me, that was kind of questionable. I don't know if he used Skype to communicate with other coworkers in other cities or other countries, but again, that turned out to be the Achilles heel, because a program like Skype, that allows you to chat and transmit files back and forth through non-standard channels, right? Meaning emails or whatever other ways that the bank may have had their policy saying, okay, if you want to transmit files, this is the way we do it. They kind of went underneath the radar by transmitting this under Skype. So again, security is something that you have to be aware. Your employees have to be aware, and it's just simply creating policies is not enough. Okay, the hackers are out there. They're very creative, very smart, and they've got a lot of ways of getting to you. So awareness is probably one of the best things that you could do to prevent cybercrime. Now, social engineers, they do their homework. They find out things about you. Okay, when they're calling you, it's sort of like sales. Before you call a prospective client, you want to find out a little bit about them, so that you could be prepared to answer questions and kind of impress them, right? Wow them with how much you know about them. Social engineers they work almost on the same principles. A social engineer can go to all the different web pages. They can go to social media. They can make calls. They can ask the receptionist for information. They could call around to hit different extensions, ask different people bits of information without raising any alarms. And with a little bit of that work, eventually they build up a big profile. They could know your name. They could know your address. They could know your phone number. There's so much information that they could learn about you from doing research, that then later on they could go and impersonate. Okay, and that's how social engineering works. So again, don't give information to people who call, okay, and are asking questions like that you think might be security related. And sometimes you think that they're not, but they are. Like I said in a couple slides ago, we discussed how that person was asking his co-workers, "Hey, what's the name of your dog?" It turns out to be a security question. So just be very, very careful. Another thing that social engineers tend to do is create an emergency. People get nervous and anxious when there's an emergency and they don't think right, and they try to create this sense of an emergency or impending doom, or that something needs to get done right away in order to get you to divulge information. It's the same tactic that car sales people use, and this sale ends today, you're not going to get this deal tomorrow. They're trying to pressure you because a lot of the times if you pause and you think about it, you might come up with a more rational conclusion. Social engineers know this, so they put a lot of pressure on you to act now. So always keep that in mind. If you feel that you're being pressured, okay, whether you're buying a car or whether you're on the phone, somebody telling you that they're going to close your bank account because it's been hacked or whatever, always have in the back of your mind, hey, you know, if I'm being pressured, there's probably you know, an alternative motive to this. Okay, so always think twice. Okay, when you're being pressured. People also, social engineers tend to create hostile situations. It's the nature of people to try to avoid fights, right? I mean, how many times have you seen you're standing in line at the supermarket and there's a kid throwing a tantrum over a piece of gum and just the parent is so embarrassed that they'll just buy the piece of gum to quell the kid. And social engineers know this. That's just part of human nature. People tend to avoid fights. So by creating hostility, okay, social engineers also use that to try to get you to divulge information. So if you feel that the person on the other end of the line is acting in a hostile way, it could be because they're trying to trick you, you know, mentally. Okay, so always, again, pause, stop, and think about things. Now, tech support scams are becoming very, very common, and as you can see by this pie chart, the United States is the big recipient, and most of the other, you know, developed countries in the world are also big recipients because they have, you know, their currency is strong and you can make a lot of money. So what are tech support scams exactly? There's a variety. There's some that, you know, the perpetrators will call you, make you believe that there's something wrong with your service, whether it's Netflix, whether it's your refrigerator, whether it's your computer or your printer. They'll tell you, we're receiving some telemetry from it and it's not working, we need to fix it, it's going to cost you X amount of money. That's if you're lucky. If you're unlucky, you know, they'll do the same thing, but instead of charging you $39 or $49, they'll actually try to run up your credit card as high a bill as they can, and it's basically, you know, theft. You know, watch out for these scams, and also they present themselves to you via web browsers, not just people calling in. If you, for example, here I needed to call Netflix for something, I can't remember what it was, so I wrote the number, I Googled the problem that I was having, and it came up with this Netflix customer support service. Now, as you can see, the Netflix customer support service is in big, bold, blue letters here, and it's got this, you know, 800 number, okay? But the company's not Netflix, it's this AT-Sync, you know, whatever. And they try to trick you. I mean, if you look at the wording, it's very deceptive. Netflix contact, it's got the number, customer care, helpline. So you think, wow, if you're not thinking and you're in a hurry and you just pick up the phone and call this number, you might think you're calling Netflix, you're not. And then this company is going to charge you for something, okay? The likelihood is, I didn't actually call them, but the likelihood is that if I would have called that number, either A, they're going to charge me for something that Netflix would have provided me for free, which is, you know, customer service. Or number two is, if it is a scam, and I don't know that it is, because there might be some companies that are legally doing this, okay? There's nothing illegal about helping you, even though you could get that service somewhere else for free, okay? But there's nothing illegal about them being the middleman. But if you're unlucky, okay, and you do run into one of these companies that are scammers, then they take your credit card and they'll try to run up a high bill. So always be careful, okay? In this case, all you needed to do was look at the actual website here, and you'll see that it's not the real Netflix. So how can you tell what's real and what's not in these types of tech support scams? Well, the number one thing that you could do is you know, look at the site carefully, read the context. A lot of these sites are operating outside the U.S. and they're just offering superfluous services that you really don't need, that a lot of the times the companies themselves, the real companies, offer these services at no additional charge. If you're a subscriber to Netflix or to Hulu or whatever streaming service,
you probably get some basic level of technical support from them as part of the subscription service. Now, these tech support scams, what they'll try to do sometimes is, if you're not aware that these companies offer you basic tech support, they'll try to charge you an additional fee to give you some basic technical support. So in the case of this one, let's see what you're okay. They're going to try to get you for $7.99 a month. Now, if you're not paying attention and you click on the link and it brings you to this web page and you look here, support for Netflix, it's got the 800 number, reads here, Netflix contact, the 1-800 for the customer care helpline. You think you're calling Netflix, but you're actually not. You're going to call this company, and it is who knows where, and you may believe that you're paying an additional $7.99 so that Netflix will give you technical support. Okay, the way that I could tell was by just reading here. If you look at the wording here, being not a big thing in the way it is moving aggressively on the business front, talking about actual Netflix, starting at a mere $7.99 a month, its subscription is full worth its each cent. Very bad grammar. That's a dead giveaway right there. So always read, always observe, use some common sense. Just whatever you do, don't act quickly. Okay, when you're online, you need to be very, very careful and be very observative, and you'll come to the right decision if you do it that way. Okay, so social media and online services. Social media and services, such as Facebook, Twitter, and others, they want as much personal information about you as possible. That's the way that they earn their money. Hackers also want as much information about you because that way they can impersonate you. And where do they go to get this? Also in social media, because there's a trove of information about you that they can use against you. So always be careful when you're allowing people that you don't know into your social media circles. If you get a friend request and you don't know that person, don't just allow them to enter your circle of friends or your group just so that you could have a lot of them, because you never know who that person is. And if by allowing them to enter into your group, then you're granting them an additional level of access. They're no longer in public mode, where the only information that they can see is the public information. Now they can see some of the private information that you've posted because you've allowed them into your group. So be very careful allowing people access to your social media if you're not sure who they are on account of just having a lot of friends. Don't post anything that you would say to a close friend. Don't post about your feelings, about your money problems. These things could be exploited by scammers. Okay, people are susceptible when they're going through difficult periods of their lives, and I know that sometimes you want to air out on social media, but scammers could pick up on this and they see you as vulnerable, and they can use that against you. Also, cyberbullies, when they see something like that, they could use it against you. Any sensitive data. Okay, and we had mentioned this before. Data, for example, password reset information, like what's the name of your school, what's the name of your dog, things like that. Don't post that, okay? Because that could be used to impersonate you. And talk to your family, your friends, your co-workers, and let them know what they should and should not post about you. Somebody could accidentally post your birthday or some other private information by simply making a post that says, hey, happy birthday so-and-so. They've just given away your birthday, maybe not your year, but your birthday. Or if they write, hey, happy 50th birthday, well, they've just given away your complete birth date, which is your birthday is often used to authenticate you by some services. And things like your favorite movie, your favorite pet, what elementary school you went to, those things should never go online, because they're generally used by certain companies to authenticate you, which in itself is a bad idea. But again, there's not a lot you can do about that, about their methods that they choose to authenticate you and give you a backdoor when you've forgotten your password. So the best thing that you can do is just not post any of this online.